COVID-19 pandemic on education, learning institution, and interruption of many literacy and lifelong learning programs have affected the lives of more than 1.6 billion children and students across the world. The situation has also affected teaching profession, making teachers unable to respond adequately to teaching and learning in most situations. Teaching, learning, and teachers' conscience have been seriously affected, leading to serious call for a rethink on how to restore and sustain quality and inclusive education for lifelong learning in community. The permanent mission of Nigeria to the United Nations, in conjunction with the Irene Menakaya School Commission Nigeria Center for SDG Global Education USA, the Bajuli and Irene Menakaya Foundation International, Divine Mercy Foundation for Vulnerable Children and Less Privileged, the Background Arts and the Scaricon Foundation International aim to bring this call to a global discussion through conference titled Community Education in a Decade of Action, Imperative for Global Efforts. The purpose, which revolves around quality and inclusive education, embracing cognitive, affective, and psychomotor learning in the growing trend of the new norm of school, the immense value of education in communities, in national development, and in particular, the United Nations Decade of Action. The purpose will explore teaching and learning conscience and willingness to ensure learning steadfastness, steadiness, and sustainability. It will champion lifelong learning across community classrooms to bridge the gap between teaching, learning, and knowledge, thus accelerating the implementation of SDG 4 and target progress in community classrooms. The objective will bring of this speech will respond to the theme around teaching and learning conscience and a decade of action on SDG 4 and targets, digital education and technologies, infrastructure for quality education in community schools, funding for sustainable quality and inclusive education in the community, roadmap for the decade of action. We are privileged to have also speakers who are also presenting virtually, and we are having His Excellency Ambassador Anwar Chaudhry, the former Under Secretary General and High Representative of the UN, is also presenting virtually. And we have His Eminence Right Honorable Dr. Philip Finn, is the Chancellor of Saika International University and visionary for World Mind International Consulting Cabinet, also presenting virtually from Florida. Dr. Jidofo Menakaya, who is the President of Bajuli and Irene Menakaya Foundation, presenting virtually from Europe. Her Excellency Barrister Dr. Teresa Ibas, wife of Ambassador of Nigeria to Ghana, is presenting virtually from Ghana. So without wasting much time, I'll call on His Excellency Ambassador Pinandise, who is a representative of the permanent representative of Nigeria in the UN to give his welcome.
Thank you so much. Your Excellencies.
He's working on the side.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Just go ahead and speak. Just go ahead and speak.
Your Excellencies, our very distinguished speakers today, members of the active distinguished legislature today, welcome to this very important meeting. We term it the summit, or the community summit. We have decided to organize this event, bearing in mind that we have a very important summit coming up this month, the Transformational Summit. My ambassador of PR is unavoidably absent. He's very much in Nigeria for a very official time. So he asked me to represent the event. So let me begin by saying that the theme of this conference community education in the decade of action, imperative for organizing global efforts, is very timely, especially as world leaders will gather here in New York in a few weeks' time at the Transformative Summit to mobilize efforts to tackle the global challenges that education faces less than 8 years to the achievement of the SDGs. The standard of education in most community schools worldwide has been reported as low, owing to a number of factors, like the geography of the communities, the rural areas, and the dynamics which has impacted learning endeavors. Research has shown that learning in rural communities and schools is not being effective. Lack of effective learning at communities is attributed to the host of challenges that were characterizing schools in these communities. These challenges relate to persistent poverty in the community, lack of parental commitment and inadequacy of resources needs to be noted so that educational stakeholders understand how these challenges influence learning. We have the issue of assets, because if you go to most communities, especially if you take it from the Sub-Saharan Africa, and of course most developing countries, you can hardly see schools, but in the communities, a school can be located within 10 or 5 miles radius, and it becomes difficult for students to access schools. You have lack of transportation, and therefore, for the students to actually go to school becomes a problem. Unlike in most advanced countries, where of course buses are not to get the students to school. In those places, there are no buses, there are no vehicles to take them to school. So it becomes a very difficult problem. Students have to walk, say, 5 miles a day to go to school. And in that circumstance, then it becomes a problem. Now, if we are talking of quality education for all by the year 2030, is it realizable given the fact that in the other communities, most people are excluded from education, so to speak? So we have a situation where a lot of students are invariably excluded from formal education. I'm not talking about the poverty issue, which is also a very big problem. But the location of schools in other communities is something that we need to ponder about. How are we responding to those? Perhaps if we go to the urban areas, of course there are schools everywhere, yes, because you understand. And today, even most people from, like I said, the Sub-Saharan African countries today, everybody is, there is this migration, from rural to urban migration, because of availability of, because of resources, because of infrastructure. So people are moving as employment. So what of those who remain within the community, these rural areas? We are somehow systematically, deliberately excluding them from formal education, and something needs to be done. So it is in this context that we are having this conference. What can we do? It's a call for action. There is need for us to begin to look at this set of students, this set of children who, by no fault of theirs, are being not only marginalized, but excluded from formal education. To achieve the visions of the 2030 agenda, deliberate efforts must be directed towards transforming educational systems, especially within the community and work areas. The crucial discussions we are having today will not only enable us to build a framework of ideas, but also a framework for imagining what the new ideals of education culture should be, and to further ahead lines of action that will bring about significant transformation within education systems across board, be it in the urban or rural community. The need for learners to acquire a certain level of knowledge and skills to promote sustainable development creates an avenue to explore in greater details the transformative power of education embedded within two contexts of influence: the national education system and the 4 walls of the school. Added to this is the opportunity to coherently harness and align all the functional components of transformation within the broader education system, the processes within the classroom. The learning disruptions and the unpleasant changes unfolding around the world post COVID-19 afford us the opportunity to rethink and imagine new ways of sustaining education development within the community. Thus, a new way to pursue transformation might be to view the school as the fundamental unit of transforming our educational systems. Within the school are classrooms where the actual process of teaching and learning occurs. The pedagogical process between the teacher and the student has far-reaching impacts on the outcomes of the learning. This is so because most teachers do not want to work and live within their communities. So you have a shortage of teachers in the communities. And what can we do to encourage teachers to live within those communities? Because that are important. Without teachers who are going to impart this knowledge, what are those students going to do? So it's a very big challenge. We are talking of a myriad of challenges confronting our people, students within this community areas, and something has to be done. So this conference again aims to tackle the challenges and issues imposed upon our education systems by the pandemic, by highlighting the power of education to transform our societies, protect our planet, and bridge the widening poverty gap and digital divide and promote sustainable development. To mitigate the challenges before us, there is the need to make educational systems more resilient to crisis and more inclusive, flexible, and sustainable to innovation. We must find a way, an innovative way of ensuring that those students from the community, rural areas, are not excluded from any formal education. When we talk of education today, most people think that education, once there's schools, the urban areas, that everybody is covered. That is not the case. Most students actually live within the community, and they are actually excluded from quality education due to lack of teachers, due to access actually, which is the major problem, access, where you have one school within the 5 or 10 miles radius. It's a very big challenge to most students in the communities. Furthermore, the aftermath of the pandemic compels us to revise the fitness and purpose of the education system, particularly our national curriculum. The mechanism through which we can truly transform education must fully align with the purpose of our education system and how well it can provide relevant solutions to the complex and yet constantly evolving challenges for society. Most countries are not developed because they are not able to tap into the transformative power of education to address sensitive issues. That cannot be done if there's a large number of people are excluded from quality education. That's what we are trying to say, that education, if we are to benefit from the power of education, everybody must be included along. A situation where most students, most children, by no fault of theirs, are outside the difficult problem being able to get over the problem. In most places today, when they have lost what today, things are, the development trajectory is such that people can see it because everybody, there has been almost 99% of literacy. I think in Africa, in some countries, it's not so. It's abysmal, and that is what we are trying to say, that the reason we are not far-fetched. A situation where the major population are living in the communities where it is, and they are not relevant. It's going to be the problem. This constitution presents us, especially the new countries, with the opportunity to work with stakeholders across sectors to transform education in its entirety by rethinking and reimagining new ways of developing, managing, and delivering education to address the challenges of our time. In other words, it's a call to deconstruct, fortify, and reinvent our various national curricula to withstand the complex demands of the 20th century. Fundamentally, our result to transform education should be echoed within our various schools and the forms of classroom where the actual process of teaching and learning occurs. To achieve the foregoing, more efforts will be made to decentralize strategic function at the school level with a commitment to strengthen local participation and empower schools with the resources to really transform teaching and learning. Our national outcomes with respect to the 2030 agenda and reflection also the pedagogical processes within the classroom. Of course, each classroom must be inclusive, like I said earlier, inclusive, healthy, and intensively structured to improve learning outcomes. If we are to look at the broader economic, political, and social context, in turn, this also nurture and support our educational systems. But education is not something for individual brothers. We have much to learn from others, and we believe all can learn from others. Yes, I say this because in some places we have seen where children learn under trees in this 21st century. Because that is part of the problem. Children learn under trees. We have seen it in most places. Someone doesn't have a desk to sit to learn. And it is not right. So go to school hungry. No food to eat. And how can somebody learn when they are hungry? So these are part of the issues that have impacted the quality education. And when we're talking of education, we have to look at it from a holistic point of view. What are those issues that tends to impede children from learning? That is what I'm trying to consciousness, because it is, we might be in a comfort zone and think that everything is fine. Some people are not fine. Some people are passing through difficult times and they learn from a difficult position to be under the tree. No desk, they sit from to learn in a very harsh conditions. So what are we saying? So how can learn techniques? Go to school hungry every day. In the course of this conference, collaborative efforts are welcome to support our continued commitments towards ensuring learners can learn seamlessly, effectively, and safely within a stimulating school environment that is responsive to the needs of the learner and equip the required social safety nets to keep students in school. It is important that governments globally ensure the provision of resources to rural schools, such as the timely deployment of qualified teachers, the construction of enough classrooms, and the availability of instructional materials for effective learning. The consideration that both and the successful implementation will help to ensure successful learning at schools situated in rural communities. In conclusion, let me reiterate the important role of education in survival and development of all nations, most crucially the transmission of knowledge and skills to our children and the future generation. I therefore call on all stakeholders, let us begin to do something to address the systemic and structural issues that hamper access to quality education, so that together we can create a world really fit for all, where no one is left behind. I thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Excellency, for that wonderful exposition on situation of education in the community. Ambassador was able to point to out that at present, learning in the community is still a problem. Quality and inclusive education in the community is still a problem. We are not most likely to realize quality and inclusive education in communities by 2030. And this stands to be that efforts must be put in place, really the stakeholders, governments, and all that are stakeholders in education to incorporate and team efforts in order to ensure that the efforts in the community on education should be realized as soon as possible. So thank you, Excellency, for that in-depth presentation. Without wasting much time, I would like Till, the Deputy Permanent Representative of our Nation of Ghana.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Let me begin by thanking the organizers for the invitation to participate in this year's Education Solutions Conference on the theme Community Education in the Decade of Action, Imperative for Global Efforts. I believe that this conference, which is taking place prior to the United Nations Transforming Education Summit in September, rightly points us to the need for urgent action on the commitments we have all made to transform learning and education outcomes before the year 2030, when the agenda for the Sustainable Development Goals are expected to be achieved. Indeed, since the unanimous adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015, efforts geared toward their realization by 2030 have been insufficient to provide the needed change, as some parts of the world continue to be plagued by poverty, the effects of climate change, armed conflicts, and pandemics, threatening several years of development gains, especially on the African continent. A few years left before the end of the decade of action truly calls for accelerating sustainable solutions for the world's biggest challenges. We are all aware that achieving inclusive and quality education for all, which is SDG 4, reaffirms that the belief that education is a necessary foundation for achieving development goals. I therefore welcome the theme of this conference, which should help us to work collaboratively towards a common goal. The global transformation agenda in education will not be complete without highlighting the complementary roles of community education and formal education. I dare say that the significant area where there has been less activity directly linked to the attainment of SDG 4 is in community learning and development. This does not in any way suggest that community education is irrelevant. In fact, in response to the dynamic trends in globalization, I believe community education would, to a large extent, complement the role of formal education in ensuring that no one is left behind. It is said that at the heart of community education is the ability for an individual and the entire community to become lifelong learners. As community education enables citizens to develop problem-solving skills to conquer the diverse challenges facing our societies. It is not far-fetched to state that it has a key part to play in making education for sustainable development a real source for positive change. While the COVID-19 pandemic has unimaginably jeopardized progress towards the attainment of the SDGs and has particularly worsened the already existing inequalities in the education sector, it makes their achievements more urgent and necessary in this decade of action. Indeed, more needs to be done to mitigate these inequalities. It cannot be overemphasized that education is a basic human right, which should be accessible to everyone even during global emergency health crises such as the COVID-19 pandemic. We therefore call on governments, donors, the international community, and state actors to revitalize efforts to invest in education systems as key drivers of a more sustainable future and to ensure that no one is indeed left behind, regardless of their social and economic status. We must not be mistaken that spending on education is an expenditure. It is indeed a profitable investment. Taking cognizance of the importance of education in any society, Ghana, through the leadership of His Excellency President Nana Akufo-Addo, has shown commitment to promoting education as a key sector for national development. We believe that without education, there is no nation. Despite the disastrous effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and prevailing global crisis, which have had adverse socioeconomic effects and dwindled the fiscal capacity of governments to respond in an effective manner, Ghana reaffirms her commitment to to promote inclusive and good education and economic opportunities for all, including the youth across the country. This is being done through the continued implementation of flagship nationally funded projects, such as the free senior high school policy, the free school feeding program, the one student, one laptop initiative, and the one teacher, one laptop initiative, among others. As infrastructure impacts education significantly, the government of Ghana continues to invest in educational infrastructure, building community schools, supplying textbooks, improving ICT labs and science laboratories, as well as establishing STEM schools at various levels to demonstrate our determination to transform education and attain improved human capital. It is worthy of note that lifelong learning programs, which is community education, including vocational training, is at the heart of the government's educational initiatives. We are grateful to all our cooperating partners, civil society organizations, UNICEF, international donors, among others, for their collaborative efforts towards the fostering of sustainable quality education for every Ghanaian child. Indeed, their contributions are a true reflection of the importance of global efforts to ensure the full realization of SDG 4. Excellencies, in concluding, I would like to reiterate that as a global community, we can only achieve our goals before the end of the decade of action if we place education, including community education, at the forefront of the international debate on sustainable development. I think.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for that presentation on still on community education. Your Excellency did point on urgent need for commitment in trying to transform education, especially in the community. She also mentioned that efforts have been insufficient in realizing the tenets of SDG 4 target within this decade. And there should be a call for accelerating solutions in order to ensure that a greater impact is made in achieving quality education, especially with respect to communities and leaving no one behind. Her Excellency also brought up the efforts of the President of Ghana, His Excellency, in trying to ensure that every child in Ghana is not left behind in education. And that's what we have done excellently. We also concluded by calling on stakeholders, team effort, government, donors, to see how we can come together to make sure that education, especially in community education, is placed at the forefront of development, especially as we are running out of the decade of action. Your Excellency, we appreciate this. So without going further, we would like to invite His Excellency from the virtual presentation, His Excellency Ambassador Anwar Chaudhry, former Under-Secretary General and High Representative of the UN, is presenting from virtually. Hello.
Okay. Yes. I am Rohika. Thank you very much. I am honored to be invited as a special guest to make a keynote presentation on the theme Community Education in the Decade Action, imperative for revitalizing global efforts. And I appreciate this invitation from the organizers. Particularly, I upcoming 77th session of the United Nations General Assembly to declare a UN Day for quality and inclusive education in the rural community. I believe this is a commendable initiative and there should be widespread support for this effort. The Sustainable Development Report, the Sustainable Development Goals Report 2022 elaborated that, and I quote, the COVID-19 pandemic has deepened a crisis in education, which sealed disruptions in education systems worldwide. School closures have had worrisome consequences to children's learning and well-being, particularly for girls and those who are disadvantaged, including children with disabilities, rural dwellers, and ethnic minorities. An estimated 127 million children missed more than half of their in-person instruction over the past 2 years. As a result, this generation of children would lose a combined total of $70 trillion in lifetime earnings under that value. Governments need to implement ambitious programs to ensure that all children return to school, recover their learning losses, and have their psychosocial needs met. End of quote. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development of the United Nations, in its Sustainable Development Goal SDGs 4.7, includes, among others, promotion of culture of peace and non-violence, women's equality, human rights, as well as global citizenship as part of knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development. It also calls on the international community to ensure that all learners acquire those by the year 2030. In UNICEF, peace education is very succinctly defined as a process of promoting knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values needed to think about the behavior change that will enable children, youth, and adults to prevent conflict and violence, both overt and structured, to resolve conflict peacefully, and to create the conditions conducive to peace, whether at an interpersonal, intergroup, national, or international levels. Peace education needs to be accepted in all parts of the world, in all societies and countries, as an essential element in creating the culture of peace. It deserves a radically different education that does not glorify war, but educates for peace, non-violence, and international cooperation. They need the skills and knowledge to create and nurture peace for their individual selves as well as for the world they belong to. Never has it been more important for us to learn about the world and understand its diversity. The task of education children and young people find aggressive means to relate with one another is of primary importance. Indeed, it should be more appropriately called education for global citizenship. such learning cannot be achieved without well-intentioned, sustained, and systematic peace education that leads the way to the culture of peace. For this, I believe that early childhood affords a unique opportunity for us to sow the seeds of transition from the culture of war and violence to the culture of peace. The events that the child experiences early in life, the education that this child receives, and community activities and socio-cultural mindset in which a child is immersed all contribute to how values, attitudes, traditions, modes of behavior, and ways of life develop. We need to use this window of opportunity to instill the rudiments that each individual needs to become agents of peace and non-violence on an early life. The UN Convention on the Rights of the Child also obliges governments to act beyond legal and moral obligations. It also makes social, political, and economic sense for countries to prioritize crucial of human rights education across their education system as a contribution to making our world a better place to be. The UN Program of Action on the Culture of Peace pays special attention to these aspects of an individual's self-transformation. In this context, I reiterate that women in particular have a major role to play in promoting the culture of peace in our violence-ridden societies, thereby bringing in lasting peace and reconciliation. Women's equality makes our planet safe and secure. It is my strong belief that unless women are engaged in advancing the culture of peace at equal levels with men, sustainable peace will continue to elude us. Education is needed to impart and instill fundamental principles. If our minds could be likened to a computer, then education provides the software with which to reboot our priorities and actions away from violence. Every individual is important to the transformation required to secure the culture of peace in our world. This means that each person must realize that non-violent cooperative action is possible. Education has a major role to play in reducing the drivers that fuel division and hatred and lead to violence and conflict. On its own, education is not enough. Values within families and the wider community must also be addressed if the gains made in school are not undermined at the end of the school day. Without quality education that ensures a focus on peace and human rights, peaceful, sustainable development, the sustainable development goals of the United Nations, particularly Goal 4, will not be realized in their sense.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you for reminding us that one of our purposes here is to look at the resolution in trying to recommend quality and inclusive education in rural communities to the 77 section. Your Excellency also talked about culture of peace and the role of facilitate the Women for Culture of Peace. He talked about bringing the international community to ensure that learning is fairly achieved by 2030 agenda. Extensive mention about peace, education, culture, human rights of the child, insecurity and violent experiences in trying to move the fundamental rights in addressing quality education in communities especially, and the consideration that there is a need to ensure that all children are not left out of school in terms of achieving the SDG 4 and quality and inclusive education. Your Excellency, we thank you for your input all the way through the virtual presentation, and we appreciate your support. Thank you so much. Without wasting more time again, as time is running, I would like to invite Excellency, the permanent representative of African Union to the United States, Excellency Ambassador Hilda Suka Mafuz.
Thank you, my sister. And let me say, honorable colleagues at the Permanent Mission of Nigeria to the UN, honorable colleagues, members of the diplomatic corps, dear esteemed leaders and partners of the 2022 CTADA Global Education Conference, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege and honor to be with you this morning and address you. At the foremost, let me express my sincere gratitude to the esteemed leaders and partners of the 2022 CTADA Global Education Conference for the kind invitation and the opportunity to address you. I would like to thank you for including the African Union in the global efforts to strategize about think tank for rebranding education in community classroom for the new normal. Allow me to recall that the UN Sustainable Development Goal 4, the education goal, aims to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and to promote lifelong opportunities for all. Similarly, the African Union Agenda 2063, in its very first aspiration, a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development. That's its first aspiration on Agenda 2063. We aspire to have well-educated and skilled citizens underpinned by science, technology, and innovation for a knowledge society, and no child misses school due to poverty or any form of discrimination. The role of the African diaspora is fundamental and very well valued by the African Union. As you know, African Union defines its diaspora as follows. The African diaspora consists of the peoples of African origin living outside the continent, irrespective of their citizenship and nationality, and who are willing to contribute to the development of the continent and the building of the African Union. This is why when you call on us, we come. We know that you are our hope for better Africa tomorrow. You have the tools. You have all what it takes to uplift Africa, to create hope through education, job creation, for your young brothers and sisters on the continent. We expect a lot from you. Ladies and gentlemen, our conference today is very important since it constitutes an opportunity for key stakeholders to take time to rethink and adjust priorities and actions of the roadmap for the decade of action on SDG 4 in communities, particularly because of the negative impact of the COVID-19 on strategic sectors, including education. The global pandemic has far-reaching consequences that may jeopardize hard-won gains made in improving global education. In fact, in 2020, as the COVID-19 pandemic spread across the globe, a majority of countries announced the temporary closure of schools, impacting more than 91% of students worldwide. The closures of schools have been correlated with substantial loss in learning. For illustration, and according to data from the World Bank, in South Africa, grade 2 students lost between 57% and 70% of a year of learning compared to their pre-pandemic peers, and the grade 4 students lost 62% to 81% of a year of learning. Also in Uganda, where schools were closed for 2 full years, the share of young students who were able to read and comprehend a story did not reduce between 2018 and 2021. But the share who could not even read letters of the alphabet doubled in size. In Africa and the education sector, the COVID-19 revealed that lack of access to technology is the biggest barrier for learning with school closures, especially in rural communities. My dear sisters and brothers, I would like to recall that in the sector of education, the African Union is implementing, together with partners, continental education strategy for Africa from 2016 to 2025, with 12 strategic objectives that include, among others, the revitalization of the teaching profession to ensure quality and relevance at all levels of education, the harness of ICT to improve access, quality, and the management of education and training systems, as well as the setting up of coalition of stakeholders to facilitate and support activities resulting from the implementation of continental education strategy for Africa from 2016 to 2025. Taking into consideration the current COVID-19 pandemic, the focus should be on digital connectivity, online platforms, teachers as facilitators, safety in schools, and skilled focused learning. A strong accent is put on the technical and vocational education and training. In closing, I would like to reiterate the readiness of the African Union in partnering with you for the implementation of the UN SDG 4 and the Continental Education Strategy for Africa 2016 to 2025 of the African Union Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. A particular focus should be on the following: the revalorization of the conditions of work and living of an African teacher, providing a meal to students at school, in promoting girls' education. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I'm very touched because she highlighted more on Africa and effort on 2063 agenda and education. Her Excellency did talk about the institutional goal that aims to ensure inclusive, quality education for lifelong learning. They also emphasized on the aspiration on focused Africa within the African Union 2063 agenda. Her Excellency went further to mention the consequences of the global pandemic that jeopardize quality and inclusive education within African communities. She noted there was an increase in the inability to read and write even alphabets during the time of the pandemic, exceedingly in developing countries, especially with respect to Africa. Her Excellency went on to say that African Union is implementing with partners 12 strategies, objectives, including the revitalization of teaching profession to ensure quality and realize education at all levels within Africa. He also mentioned that African Union is working towards the digital connectivity with attention on technical and vocational education and training. I think we are hitting the net, we are hitting the ball on the net, right? So Your Excellency, thank you so much for that, bringing us to a little bit of situation in and efforts of African Union in trying to revitalize the regional efforts in achieving the SDG for within Africa. So thank you so much. I would like to also invite senior diplomat here at the UN and our advisor to our organization, the Center for SDG Global Education USA, in the person of His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Dennis Antoine, who was the former Assistant President to the UNGA 69 section.
Thank you. Thank you, our moderator. Representatives of the Permanent Mission of Nigeria, distinguished ambassadors of Ghana and the African Union, my fellow panelists, Dr. Ada Okika, our convener of this SDG 4 UN Education Conference. Greetings, everyone. I've had the privilege of working in this room when we were about the development of the SDGs. And today it is very good to return to the scene. Today we are talking about community education in the decade of action. Community education needs community organization and community organizers. And so I am very pleased to be associated with one of the strongest community organizers that I know, Dr. Ada Okika. You in this room today, when you look around, the room is not full. It's half full, or even less than that. But I wouldn't worry because you are special. You are the stakeholders that the SDG was looking for. You are the community organizers. You are the group leaders. You are the stakeholders. And just imagine you would not be here if Dr. Okika did not call out to you. So today, because community education or community-based education is about public learning and development, which includes programs and activities that promote learning and the development of social and economic independence. Therefore, community education must be about working with individuals and groups in their communities, incorporating a wide range of formal and informal approaches. Community-based learning must incorporate the community and immediate environments into training approaches, because there are many models as there are societies. While the overall goal is to integrate the community into academic learning, however, community learning cannot be about a theory and methods alone. It must be measured by the achievement of desired outcomes aimed at achieving identified, or I should say, aimed at redressing identified community problems. Now, community education needs to be resourced. Therefore, there must be communication for development, methodology of development projects, and design with logical frameworks, including fundraising and financing techniques for social projects, training of parents on how to keep their children learning in pandemic-related restrictions, and how to evaluate public policies must be critical components. Open educational resources are a welcome approach to much needed transfer of education technology, which can help to reduce accessibility barriers. However, in our race to 2030, there can be no deviation from the objectives of equipping communities with the skills they need to undertake the activities to promote and educate diverse groups in our villages and wider communities. Now, ministries of education and departments of education and professionals in developing countries must provide ongoing training, workshops, continuing education, and retraining programs. Now, careful attention must be paid to using global indicators to measure local and national standards. Communities must provide policy guidelines relating to cost and methods, which are critical needs for harmonization of local and national policies. These approaches can make partnerships in education an enabling force. You remember we speak about the 5 P's. I want to focus on the last P, partnerships. Therefore, if we are to emerge stronger from COVID-19, we can't lose any more global momentum. Hence, reliable partners must be our hope. Now, corrections of past approaches can be made, even in the midst of continuous changes in our societies. Communal education supports and the application of research findings to combat the challenges confronting our people. There is a lot of research out there. How can we use the research findings to combat the challenges in our communities? More prudent data collection, storage, security, and use amid planning are critical issues. Now, disaggregation and use of data remains a useful means to reveal deprivation and inequalities that may not be fully reflected in aggregated data. The educational goals of UNESCO, now which are learning to know, learning to do, learning to be, learning to live together, must continue to be passed on to our youths that gather in clubs and schools and organizations. UNESCO goals must be at the foundation of community development. We all agree that education improves quality of lives. Therefore, education must be more than becoming literate. It must be about acquiring skills for earning. Now, today I am very pleased to applaud the initiative like African Coding Network, which provide African youths with end-to-end support to get on and to and through a learning to earning pathway in the fast-growing digital and technology economies. Now, it is worth reminding ourselves that by working in partnerships, we create lasting change. And every time we become a part of someone's world, we broaden ours. The proposed United Nations Secretary General Transformation Education Summit during the 77th UN General Assembly, that provides an opportunity to mobilize political ambition and action towards solution and solidarity for transforming education. In addition, however, to taking stock of efforts to remove pandemic-related learning losses. Now, to recover from that, we must be mindful that the study of life processes teaches us that history never stops. And it's like an endless relay. And we are all part of an intergenerational team. And the momentum gained in the race to 2030 would not be lost if we do not drop the baton. Now, realistically, COVID in itself should be regarded as a transformative change maker. COVID is a transformative change maker. It has spurred growth in the science field and global collaboration, which must be passed on to areas of need. So, COVID is a teacher. I would hope that we were taught that we can't go back to our old ways. So, in closing, I want to invite you, as I have done in my current work with children, writing children's books, where I have invited children to get on board. They are children of the world. Let us get on board to this journey to 2030, which is coming fast. And let us all be ambassadors for a better world. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Wow, I was excited when you said that COVID is a teacher. Well, I hope that those that lost their words during COVID, you have taught us something. Thank you, Your Excellency. Well, one other significant thing that I want to mention is about partnerships. Putting together in order to solve the puzzle in achieving quality and inclusive education in the community. You also noted that about the UNESCO goals, learning to live, learning to know, learning to live together, learning to, I think all of them, should also be geared towards community development, and education is also a part in the community development. Ambassador mentioned about the need that education must be acquiring skills, not just learning, acquiring skills and development. So there's also the focus is needed on equipping communities, villages, and wider communities with education and development. So thank you, Your Excellency, and I know that what you said is from the old hand, as we said, from the horse's mouth. And he has been trying to promote SDG 4 to schools for children to get on board with SDGs for a decade of action. So we appreciate you, Excellency. Thank you, sir. We want to bring in another virtual presenter in the person of His Excellency, Right Honorable Dr. Philip Finn, who is the Chancellor of Saipa International University and visionary for the Worldwide International Consulting Academy. We are evidence you have it.
Thank you. Good morning. Greetings. Just quick. I think it is very long. Okay. Thank you. Greetings, distinguished ambassadors and official delegates. It is my pleasure to offer this forum a positive initiative that we at Cycle National University Technical Center is taking as least to support the UN goals for the 2030 as it relates to affordable education. We are pleased to announce that we have developed a QAP, Quality Affordable Education Plan, specifically for the undeveloped and developing countries. In so doing, we have forged a partnership with the City and Guild of the Institute, thus giving us the ability to offer qualifications in over 500 career disciplines from levels 5, 6, and 7, the respective equivalent of associate, bachelor, and master's degrees, with costs ranging from 50 to 1,500 USD. My emphasis is not on free. Nothing is free, even when we use it free. But rather, I am here to emphasize quality on affordability. Yes, we at South International University believe that education must become a human right and not just an opportunity for the usual few who can afford it. If we allow this trend to continue, we will not be able to curb crime, poverty, and employment. Benefits. It is time for action. It is good that we are talking, but talking without a plan of action will bear no fruit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. You mentioned the quality, affordable education plan that is not free. It's not free. That is affordable. It also emphasizes quality. And it's saying that time is now for more action and not talking. But talking without a plan is like fruit and yesterday fruit. Thank you, Your Eminence. Thank you, Excellencies, who have taken time to be with us and these complete sessions. We appreciate your interventions and your statements into this initiative of trying to plug in into the situation of community education in quality and inclusive education in the communities. And we are concerned with the civil societies, the stakeholders. We are much concerned because most of us grew up in the community. And recalling that while we were in the community, while we were young, what is still contained with them in the community seems to still continue. And even when most of us are 40 and above 50, we still have these challenges that existed when we were young and when we grew up in villages and every school. So it gives us that inner passion that more efforts will be here, that look into the community education to see how the children of the less privileged, the children of the widows, the children of the have-nots, the children, the orphans in the village, the single parents, the single mothers that have nothing to train their children, should be giving them opportunity in trying to bring them up. We are losing presidents, doctors, attorneys, engineers, UN ambassadors, diplomats in the community because they are not being given opportunity and receive quality and inclusive education. So I'm glad that our ambassadors are here and they are able to also make input to this impending concern. Yes, COVID exposed it more because during this COVID era, no school in the local country community were in school. The children were all running about, some were left into violence. The girls were raped, they were killed, a lot of killings, conflict, a lot of things happened because they have not to school. So we want to take this further, and I'm saying it because this section is to bring in the academias and the civil societies into this effort. Those who have been in the field, in the communities, addressing this issue, to share their information. So without much wasting time, I want to invite Dr. Trina Yearwood, who is Associate Dean of School of Education, Queen's College in New York.
Good morning, Excellencies, distinguished UN representatives, fellow speakers, educators, students, and guests. Thank you, Dr. Okika, for the invitation to share my thoughts today. In September 2019, when discussing progress towards the 2030 Agenda, the UN Secretary General said, quote, "We are far from where we need to be. We are off track. We must step up our efforts now," end quote. It was during those remarks that Secretary General Guterres issued a global call for a decade of action to accelerate solutions to the world's problems. He believed that mobilization over the next 10 years in the following 3 essential areas would help us meet our sustainable development goals. 1, global action. 2, local action. And 3, people action. With 8 years remaining in this decade of action, I want to focus on that 3rd essential area, people action, because it is my belief that in order to achieve SDG 4, quality and inclusive education, we must give power to the people. In March 2021, UNESCO reported that almost 900 million children worldwide continue to face disruptions to their education. 1 year later, a March 2022 UNESCO report about children's learning loss indicated that, quote, "This is a now or never moment to act and transform education in order to save this generation," end quote. Just 2 months ago, in June 2022, leaders from the Latin America and Caribbean region declared, quote, "The education crisis affecting the region is unprecedented. If we do not act now to recover learning losses, an entire generation of children and young people will be less productive in the future and have fewer opportunities for progress and well-being," end quote. There are many more publications that report similar findings and concerns, that our educational systems across the globe are in crisis. But if we are truthful today, we can admit that these Eurocentric, hegemonic, monolithic educational systems have been in crisis long before this global pandemic. In fact, these colonial systems of education have created and perpetuated crises such as genocide, enslavement, loss of land, oppression, white supremacy, internalized inferiority, poverty, public health disasters, racial discrimination, and illiteracy. If we want to transform education in order to save this generation, then we must give power to the people. If we want to revitalize global efforts, then we must give power to the people. If we want to ensure quality and inclusive education for all children, then we must give power to the people. We must dismantle colonial systems of education and replace them with quality educational systems that honor the history, language, customs, values, and needs of the people. As the Associate Dean of a School of Education that is tasked with preparing quality teachers, I am reminded of the words of Marion Wright Edelman, who said, "Education is for improving the lives of others and for leaving your community and world better than you found it." Because schools and communities should complement each other to provide quality education, teacher preparation programs are in a unique position to give power back to the people through community-centered teacher education. I will share 5 important lessons that I've learned from reflecting on my own practice in the field for the last 22 years. First, the education we provide teacher candidates must be informed by the needs of the community. In 1950, Dr. Eric Williams, historian and former Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, argued that when the education is so divorced from the needs of the community, it is very difficult to give the correct training to teachers. Teacher preparation programs must be intentional in identifying and inviting community stakeholders to the table and going to their tables as well, to engage in authentic and collaborative ways. Second, teacher preparation programs must be grounded in history. In 1935, W.E.B. Du Bois affirmed that the proper education of any people includes knowledge on the part of the teacher of his surroundings and background, and the history of his class and group. Teacher candidates, therefore, cannot leave teacher preparation programs without knowing the history of the people they wish to teach, or without knowing their own true histories. To that end, teacher preparation programs must collaborate with a variety of community stakeholders, including local cultural centers, different university departments such as Africana Studies, Latino Studies, Ethnic Studies, Anthropology, Sociology, as well as with elders and griots from the community who possess a wealth of cultural history to revise their programs. Third, we must intentionally create teacher education pipelines. If we want to prepare teachers who are racially aware, critically conscious, culturally competent, and inclusive, then we need diverse teacher education leaders and faculty who are racially aware, critically conscious, culturally competent, and inclusive. In education, we always talk about the importance of modeling, and modeling begins in preparation programs. We cannot expect our students to become the teachers or leaders that we are not. Fourth, support lifelong learning. Schools and colleges of education must offer opportunities for alumni, faculty, other teachers, community stakeholders like youth workers, to continually develop their practice through effective, ongoing professional development. Local community members can be brought in to share pearls of wisdom about the community and its resources. Finally, assess for continuous improvement and involve multiple stakeholders in the assessment process. I know assessment is a nasty word that people don't like to talk about, but it is about measuring our students' knowledge, understanding, and ability to apply what they have learned. Findings, for example, from a performance assessment after engaging in a community-based clinical experience, an alumni or community impact survey, or focus group with principals who hire our graduates can provide rich and meaningful data to improve our programs, support teaching, and enhance learning. If this pandemic has taught us anything, it has taught us that we need the people. The teachers, the youth, the innovators, the disruptors, the community leaders, and other stakeholders. We need people like Karan King, a principal in Westmoreland, Jamaica, who used his motorbike to ensure that his students in rural areas remained a part of the learning community by delivering and picking up homework packages. We need people like Marlon Yolabet Vasquez, a teacher from Honduras, who made sure students who were at home due to the school closures received learning resources and adequate meals. We need people like Najiba, a 19-year-old from Pakistan, who partnered with an organization so that she could teach the children in her family whose schools were closed. Despite the challenges of the pandemic, the people took action to ensure that our children's needs were met. Archbishop Desmond Tutu said, "It is our moral obligation to give every child the very best education possible. The quality of education that those children receive depends on the quality of education their teachers receive." Imagine what teaching and learning would look like across the globe if the education we provided honored the knowledge, value, wisdom, and needs of the community. Thank you.
Dimension of this looking at people action, and for us to transform, for us to achieve anything in the community with respect to quality and inclusive education, there should be focused on people action. He also mentioned on teacher preparation program, which also will bring or will revitalize teachers on teaching consciousness in order to improve inclusion in the community. Thank you so much for that. Without wasting time, we are running fast. Please, let's all look at the time. I want to invite Phyllis Dickerson, who is the Chief Executive Officer of African American Lawyers Association in Washington, D.C.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me and inviting me. And so I don't claim to be an academic, so I came to ask the academics a few questions. Could it be we have failed our students and not they have failed us? What if we went back to basics and used technology to leverage the learning process? Question. What if we actually had our children attend a school in their neighborhood and assign teachers based on their neighborhood so they wouldn't have to ride a bus for an hour a day? What if they walked to school together and had a sense of community and responsibility? What if we made sure our neighborhoods were well lit and kids didn't have to walk to and from school in the dark? What if all homework was actually done during school hours in order to ensure students had everything they needed, including internet access and teachers able to ask questions to? And what if alternative schools were opportunities to counsel students to get back on track and make sure they didn't fall behind in class? And what if athletes were offered morning study hall to assist them in maintaining their GPAs? And what if parents were part of the strategy to ensure success of their kids so they understood their responsibility? And what if students were given laptops and portable internet access? And what if we stopped hiring teachers who decided teaching is a job they will take until they get the job they want? We raise the standard for teaching by hiring teachers with a master's degree and require professional attire. What if we hired teachers who weren't scared of our children and always used corrective action as a way to control them? And what if entrepreneurship was taught in elementary school? What if we allowed students to have an hour a day to think of places and things they wanted to do in life and show them how to accomplish their goals. And what if we stop putting our children on medication? The counselor decided they had ADHD. Could it be they are bored or need more exercise? And what if we went back to prayer in schools? What if we had hybrid learning opportunities like e-learning or remote learning and small group learning? And what if we allowed school to happen any time of the day or week instead of Monday through Friday, 8 to 4? And what if we allowed students to ask why it's important to study subjects and get rid of the ones they'll never use? What if financial literacy and heirs property classes were taught in elementary? And what if we taught our students how to do a business plan and how to do a startup business in elementary school? What if we stopped buying our kids video games and teach them how to shoot instead of games to teach them how to use critical thinking skills? And what if corporations invested in schools instead of prisons for profit? And what if what if we offer city wraparound services in school so it would be a one-stop shop for parents? All I can say is that what we're doing isn't working, so let's try something different. So let me end with a quote from Theodore Roosevelt. To educate a man in the mind and not in morals is to educate a menace to society.
Tell the Secretary of United Nations that SDG 4 is achieved.
Come on.
Thank you so much. We want to bring in another speaker virtually, Dr. Jidofo Menakaya, the Vice President of Julie and Irene Menakaya Foundation from Europe. Dr. Jidofo Menakaya, Vice President, Bajuni and Irene Menakaya Foundation International. Was not you? Okay. Okay, can we have Prince Dr. Osita Nemeka, the Chancellor of Sub-Saharan University for Africa?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Amina, moderator. So, I'm honored to be here. Your Excellencies, Your Royal Highnesses, great speakers and guests, esteemed ladies and gentlemen. My name is CTADA. I work for Sub-Saharan University. And I'm also the chairman of the Governing Council of CTADA Global, Global Initiative as Gathering Youth for the United Nations Decade of Action. When saying rural community education, what does it really mean? I mean, what are we talking about? I know that in my college, current construct for rural community education is that an education system in rural communities that builds capacity and knowledge in the rural populace, helping them to make informed decisions about their farms and such as economic distress and high teacher turnover. So, what are the effects? Education impacts social change by improving individual social position as well as standard of living. Education also increases critical ability through people to diagnose their needs, accept their rights, take greater control of decisions affecting their lives. So, what is education in rural development? I will go slowly here. First and foremost is education that helps increase functional ability of rural people. Functional ability of rural people. Two, it is education that increases the productivity of the rural labor force. Three, it is education that provides trained manpower for rural areas. And last but not least, education that provides employment and higher income opportunities to rural people. So, what role does good education play in rural development? Rural schools face severe challenges that are linked to the environment. A lack of parental interest in children's education, insufficient funding from the state, a lack of resources, underqualified teachers, and not great teaching are some of the barriers to effective education in rural areas. So this includes also the major obstacle, because some districts across the country increase the use of technology in classroom. Many rural districts do not have the infrastructure and will allow them to do exactly what urban schools do. So problems with connectivity, costs, budget constraints prevent rural schools from having adequate internet and connection at all. So what we find in urban schools become a far distance from what rural parents experience. So why can't we provide quality education in rural areas? Here are some of the ways that we recommend. Boost free education. As someone here said, not free but affordable in which way, but just make it affordable so that the rural education system becomes something that all people can have access to. Poverty is one of the most critical and common problems in rural communities across Africa. We also say establish more schools in one area. Work on the school infrastructure, provide amenities for schools. So that Taylor said that some students, as the first speaker said, some schools in rural Africa are under trees. Work on school infrastructure means that provide the desks, chairs, and environment for these kids to learn in a better environment. Being innovative teaching methods. We don't have the one that gives us all. For the environments that we find ourselves, let's be creative enough to find teaching methods that will work for pupils and learners. And then we also need to provide computer literacy for the rural learners. If you ask the rural teacher, what is one problem facing the rural learners? You hear them say to begin with, a large portion of rural students must deal with access to quality reading materials, and instructions at an early age. That is having them to be focused on reading, especially for preschool, the lack of consistent access to medical care, the impact of opioid abuse and child homelessness in low-income homes, and also the fact that most students go to school and then they need to study rural life and rural communities. You don't know who you are dealing with, how do you start? If you do that, with the develop relationship between the village and the towns, the rural and urban areas. You do that, we lay stress on education for the solution of the rural problems. And also do that, we help the change agents and community development workers to know the effect need of society. And then we can help the rural area to satisfy these needs. So, school education. The main reason is using rural and urban schools. After all, the difference between both is that students are not of intellect, but due to the surrounding environment, learn ability, infrastructure, skills, and access to different facilities. Considering these factors, the curriculum for rural learning must be created. It must be shaped in a way that the benefits of the local learner and the rural learner must be taken into consideration. So the question now is, are rural learners less educated? Are they really less educated? While the formal educational system of in rural areas has increased remarkably, over time, the share of adults with valuable education is still higher in the urban areas. So, is education worse in rural areas? As in rural schools have access to fewer advanced classes than urban areas. So the situation of education in rural communities, you can see, is not good, but they improve. So in closing, there are 5 ways I would suggest for improving rural community education in Africa. 1, reduce cost of education. Several African countries have abolished school fees, but for some, it's still unreachable and unattainable. School lunch programs. It is a program that Martin learned very important. Educating parents. What these parents have key roles to play in developing local community education. As a matter of fact, number 1, in making it work and make it happen. Number 4, a new educational model that values fair needs for engineering projects of the future will be adopted. And number 5, last but not least, we must improve resources for teachers. Teachers need to know how to teach rural learners, especially focusing on the requirements for teaching Generation Z. Thank you.
I wouldn't want to waste time going back to summary of the presentation, but to use that 1 minute to wish you happy birthday as today is your birthday. I'll call Dr. Stockman and I is ready to please come on.
Good afternoon. I don't know many of you.
Yes.
Hear me?
Yes.
I knew someone asked me to get this press this. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Am I not better?
What better? Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead and speak.
My greetings to the ambassadors, to the permanent ambassador of Nigeria to the UN, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen who are attending this conference today. I have some slides. I don't know whether it's possible to see those slides at all in the room. I'll just talk to the slides. Are you able to see those or not?
No, go ahead and speak to this child. Go ahead.
Okay. Not to worry. So as we all know, the pandemic has had a major impact on provision of education, not just for children, but across the whole levels of training. Countries responded to the pandemic. One early casualty of government response were schools. Worldwide, many schools shut their doors to students as efforts were made to contain the pandemic. For societies that have necessary infrastructure, distance rapidly implemented. These models exploit the digital technology. Some countries use radio and television broadcasts, but many others, particularly the OECD countries, invested in digital online platforms. And these resources enable us to access learning resources themselves, wherever they or participate, empower children in real-time learning classes with their teachers. And these resources were funded either privately, using public finance, or did a combination of both. What COVID-19 has shown is that digital technology offers the entire new answers to the question of what people learn, how they learn, and where and when they learn. How can enable teachers and students to access specialized material or just textbooks or reading notes, access images in multiple formats, and in many ways, bring time and space. It also transforms the way learning is done and changing it strictly from a teacher-student relationship to where students and teachers are co-creators of knowledge and skills. Despite these benefits, we do know that many schools, even in richer countries of the world, do report shortages and inadequacies of. If that expense 30% in France and Italy, I wonder how that happens in less resource countries. Just 1 minute, I think I said my connection is still solid. So, these figures have a problem, particularly in low resource countries. And therefore, principals will be aware, not all principals are aware of what technology can offer. I think a speaker has commented on teachers also being accessing these technologies with their own training and professional development. And therefore, to do that, we need to think of a culture shift from in-person learning to indeed increasingly blended approaches to learning. It's not surprising that certainly in richer countries, the younger teachers are more technically savvy, the older experience and expertise teachers. So, Barrister Jacob, Judy, and Irene Menentire International Foundation is honored today to support the launch of Rural Plus. Rural Plus stands for Rural Remote Affordable Learning Platform, a digital learning platform at this 2022 Gerald. Our ambition our goal with this launch is to narrow the achievement gap between teachers and students in rural areas of the world who have little or no resources either in the classroom or outside the classroom. Our vision is that students in the world's rural community will use different enabled devices supported by a robust digital infrastructure, teachers that are well-trained, and an exciting curriculum to enable them to achieve high-quality outcomes. Our mission is to work with global and local partners in education, technology, in government, in finance, to deliver affordable internet-enabled remote learning programs for all students in the world's rural communities. We aim to ensure that every student in these communities has access to high-quality, affordable, or remotely delivered education. The objectives we have for the Global Plus program: develop an exciting digitally enabled curriculum for all students based on the needs of their local environment. Develop a robust telecommunication infrastructure for internet-enabled, remotely delivered education. Develop a comprehensive training and support program such that curriculum is delivered adequately to students in the communities. To implement a program of widespread access to affordable personalized devices to enable individual participation in remote learning programs and enable research and development
community to review its approach to providing skills and knowledge to its citizens. Digital models of learning has provided a lifeline that through this months of lockdown and community lockdowns, but also highlighted the vital importance of education. The Road Plus is an online platform that seeks to bring together online resources, online learning spaces, communities, partners, for teachers and students to co-create knowledge, and those particularly in rural communities. And thank you for allowing me to speak at this forum.
The level of education to achieve quality education in an affordable terms. Thank you so much. Our time is running, and I really want the many speakers to be very considerate in their presentation. Kindly, I want to bring in Dr. Jamin McCarthy, Associate Professor and Chair, African and African American Studies Program, New Jersey City University.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. To all ambassadors, excellencies, plenipotentiaries, specially invited guests, family and friends, good afternoon. I would like to thank Dr. Okika for her invitation to this very important conference. This afternoon, I'd like to make a statement concerning education, community education for transformation towards reparatory justice in education. Education is important, but the content of this education is far more important. Learning is fundamental to the advancement of any society or people, but what we learn, how we learn it, and who we learn it from are indispensable to development. Development can be defined as a transformation of thinking, being, doing in a sustainable and equitable manner in the distribution of benefits, burdens, and shared ownership. The Ewemina proverb from the region of modern-day Benin, Ghana, and Togo states that until the lion gets his own storyteller, the story of the hunt will glorify the hunter. Africans at home and abroad have historically been muted or drowned out of chronicling their history. We must break the cycle of orthodox thinking, the kind that reproduces what Chimamanda Adichie calls a single story. This story depicts Africa as a space of imitation, immaturity, and ignorance. The first action, therefore, is to decolonize our thinking. The COVID-19 pandemic has interrupted many of the SDG targets. The epidemiological divide has worsened the educational divide. As second vice president of the Community Education Council in Queens, New York, Southeast, students of color have suffered not just learning loss, but a worsening of learning loss. Globally in 2018, 260 million children were out of school. In April 2020, 1.6 billion children were out of school. Equitable education sees students as meaningful and valuable ends in themselves, because in the great lottery of life, we can never predict which student will excel, and so we create the conditions for all students to excel. The SDG goal 4 of quality education that is inclusive and promotes equity can only be realized when we equip learners with a skill set that is adaptive, transformative, relevant, and responsive to the realities of our present world and the possibilities of our future. Quality, equitable education must be premised on a philosophy of reparatory justice. It sees education as an opportunity to remediate the historic injustices of the past, such as those that confine students to second-class status simply because they do not fit the existing models. We have done great injustice to an entire generation of students by teaching them to do it the way it has always been done and then to expect different results. The COVID-19 pandemic has revealed the weaknesses of existing models of teaching and learning that are deficit-centric. These focus on what students do not know rather than what they do know. The strength-based model places greater emphasis on building on what they know for success. Educational and social resilience will not be possible without, economic and social resilience will not be possible without educational resilience. Educational resilience demands the will to take action by discarding models that have continued to tell our children that they are failures because they do not fit into the mold of standardized testing excellence, and that vocational and technical competencies are somehow inferior to academic programs. I conclude, the new normal for educational resilience must consist of three things. First, it must involve parents, teachers, administrators, students, and communities as partners in educational transformation. We must premise this on the ethos of Ubuntu. I am because we are. There is no community without people. Second, we must reframe educational priorities to reflect the future needs and demand for economic transformation. We cannot prepare for jobs and the needs of the future by teaching how we have taught in the past. And third, the post-pandemic classroom must be a democratic space, a space of deliberation, dialogue, and debate, rather than one of delegation, discrimination, and deficit thinking. Education done in the manner I've outlined above has the potential to transform our world and to lead to achieving Vision 2030 for development. The decade of action must not be passive, it must be deliberate and decisive, pregnant with purpose and development. It was Marcus Garvey, Jamaican Pan-Africanist thinker, who asserted, "It is by education that we become prepared for our duties and responsibilities in life. If one is badly educated, he must naturally fail in the proper assumption and practice of his duties and responsibilities." Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.